Welcome to the sights and sounds in and around Prem and Proper in Match Week 20 as we head toward Match Week 21 here at SDH. And we've got a lot of sound and a lot of teams to get through. We'll go through the standings and we'll get you prepared for the weekend that will be. Let's go backward before we go forward, as we always do. Let's get into the scores from last weekend. We had the derbies, for those of you who also caught contributor Niles' review preview of what went down in match week number 20. But going back just quickly and going over the final scores, you had a lot of derbies, and the run for European competition and the run for the fight for relegation definitely have really taken up speed as we've worked our way forward. Last week, you had your standard 10 matches, and it was working your way through. It was Friday night football. Let's go back to Thursday. And Fulham and Chelsea. Fulham with a 2-1 win over Chelsea at a plus 304. Villa and Leeds on Friday night football. Villa got the win 2-1 at a plus 102. A lot of action on Saturday, 6 matches. Manchester Derby went to Manchester United, and there were 2 goals in very short succession for Manchester United, and one play that has stuck with the fans of the Premier League all week long. Offside, not offside. We'll get into that with Stephen Warnock coming up in just a little bit. Wolves, a 1-0 win over West Ham. That happened at a plus 150. Nottingham Forest, big win for them, 2-0 over Leicester City at a plus 172. Southampton, big win over Everton at Goodison Park. Southampton at a plus 2.25. Brighton over Liverpool by the score of 3-0 at the Amex at a plus 195. Brentford at home, a minus on the board, finally getting the minus favorites with wins in their particular locations at the G-Tech. Brentford wins 2-0 over Bournemouth. Then on Sunday, you had 3 matches. Newcastle 1-0 over Fulham. One of the strangest things that hasn't happened in quite some time, a double kick by Alexander Mitrovic as he was taking a penalty. And for those that had Mitrovic in their fantasy teams, minus points because it was counted as a penalty missed at a minus 204. Chelsea at a minus 114 over Crystal Palace by the score of 1-0. And in the North London derby, Arsenal 2-0 win over Spurs at a plus 120. We are in the middle of the January transfer window, and a lot of activity going on. Let's start with Manchester United. Wout Weghorst wanted to buy his way out of his time in Turkey. Here is Wout Weghorst, now that he has made his made his trip to Manchester United, what he thinks about the move, courtesy of Manchester United their own selves.
Yeah, really excited, of course. Great. It's a great feeling. The last week, of course, when I heard for the first time for the interest was special, and proud that everything is done now, and I'm a United player.
When were you first aware that the move might be on?
Yeah, I think it's over a week ago now. My agent called me actually for the first time, and I was together with my girl, and she was a little bit shocked because she saw my face, and I was like, "Oh!" So that was a special moment, and that was really nice, of course.
And what attracted you to move here at this stage of your career?
Yeah, good for me. It's I think also, to be honest, it's the right moment, and I feel as a footballer, I'm 30 years old now. I've experience also already in the Premier League. That was not that quite successful as I hoped, and I was really waiting and looking forward to get back here, because in my opinion it's still the biggest competition in the world, and now to gonna play for one of the biggest clubs in England. For me, the biggest club is of course amazing, and I feel also, like I said, as a football player, also as a human being, the stage I am now, develops it that I did. I'm ready for it, hope it, and I think this is the right moment to take on this great challenge, of course.
And what are your first impressions of the training ground at Carrington? You've been there, and obviously here at Old Trafford. What are your first impressions?
Yeah, I've been here now for 3 days, and Carrington training ground. Of course, it's top class, everything. The trainings also we had already was great, and of course I was at the match yesterday, and I need to speak about that. That was it was the first time for me to to come in Old Trafford. I always said there are a few stadiums in the world that I only want to go there if I'm capable to play there. There was one of them, so it was the first time. So that was actually a really special moment, and the atmosphere and everything was, of course, it was wonderful.
Arsenal, top of the table, and they are not afraid to make moves. They did lose out on Mykhailo Mudryk, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be investing in other players, as they are now 8 points clear, just clear at the halfway point of the season over Manchester City. How about Declan Rice? Our friends at Good Morning Transfers and Sky Sports News addressed that particular topic.
After not signing Mykhailo Mudryk, attention now turns to finding an alternative option. Before we get to that alternative, though, there was so much talk, especially on Twitter last night, about Declan Rice, because a number of outlets reporting that Arsenal will be making the West Ham midfielder their number one target this summer, and that he could well become their record signing. I mean, for you, James, it seems to make sense.
It absolutely does make sense. I remember at the end of the last transfer window in the summer, Arsenal fans were really disappointed they didn't get another central midfielder. Not that they were expecting someone like Declan Rice, but I think when you look at the two centre midfielders that Arsenal have in Partey and in Xhaka, when you go below that, the quality isn't quite there. Now, that doesn't mean that Declan Rice would sit on the bench for Arsenal, but he just adds another option. And one thing that was quite interesting, he's spoken about his ambitions in the past, Declan Rice, but during the World Cup, he really made it clear he wants to play in the Champions League. He wants to, at the end of his career, look back at what he's won, the big games he's played in. So it makes a lot of sense, because unless there's a major collapse now, Arsenal will definitely be in the Champions League next season, and West Ham are unlikely to be in Europe next season. I mean, the way things are going, they might not be in the Premier League next season. I mean, West Ham fans will be hoping they can turn it around. But you do get the feeling that this will be the summer that Declan Rice goes, because West Ham won't be able to offer him the top-level European competition that he wants to play in. Yes, they'll want a huge fee, but I think if that money comes in, then this will be the summer where he does go. This
is a player that's been linked to Chelsea window after window after window. Surely they're going to fight Arsenal, especially with what happened with Mudryk as well.
Especially with what happened with Mudryk. Chelsea came in like a thief in the night. But Declan Rice is obviously came from Chelsea's academy. This is a player that Chelsea fans have been keeping an eye on for the last few years, with a view to signing them maybe this summer or the summer after. But Chelsea have got their own struggles this season, and Declan Rice, like James touched on, is a very ambitious player. He wants to be playing Champions League football. He wants to be competing for the highest honours. Chelsea look very unlikely to finish in the top four this season. And Rice was a player admired by previous managers in the previous regime. Frank Lampard was a big fan of him. Thomas Tuchel also liked him. I'm not sure what Graham Potter's view or stance is on Declan Rice. So seeing him linked to Arsenal was no surprise, because he's a top quality player and he'll add a lot to Arsenal midfield.
Yeah, and it's a different prospect now, Arsenal, I suppose, in a way, isn't it, to a year ago, to a couple of years ago?
Yeah, 12 months ago, even 6 months ago maybe, this was absolutely unthinkable that Arsenal would be in the race for Declan Rice. I think it would be a match made in heaven. Yeah. Those two, I think Declan Rice would really suit Arsenal. He'd become like almost the face of Arsenal. Looking at what Arteta's trying to do, he'd be the perfect type of player to come in and add to their midfield and add to their squad. And you know, if they are fighting on four fronts next season, they're going to need a bigger squad, and they're going to need some extra quality. Declan Rice coming into Arsenal and being a real leader is something I would be all for seeing happening as an England fan as well. I'd much rather see him at Arsenal at the moment than see him go to Chelsea. I think the interesting thing is as well, West Ham will not want to lose Declan Rice, but they probably feel that this summer that they have to. I think they've got a year's option on his contract if they want that to kick in. But I think they'll probably know that this is the last summer where they can get that massive money for Declan Rice. I mean, James said it as well bravely. West Ham might not even be in the Premier League next season. So Declan Rice, to Arsenal, that fascinates me, and it's something I'd really like to see.
In ninth at 28 points, they've lost 2 in a row. Jurgen Klopp was asked about loyalty of his senior players and whether or not he, meaning Klopp, had that loyalty, and that was driving his starting lineups and whether or not it will in the future, courtesy of Liverpool their own selves.
The problem is too complex. So you only can have a good player who obviously did a lot of good stuff in the past, so that's what we are talking about. And then in your mind, maybe that's it now for him. So if you can then go out and bring another player to replace him, that makes sense. Both sides, good idea. Come on, it was a great time. See you later. Yes, if you cannot bring anybody in, you cannot bring anybody out. That's the situation again. So it's about that. And again, I'm not sure I said it before, but it's an intelligent question. The only problem is what you all make of the answer. That's the only problem with that. So, but I'm not too loyal. So, I think at Dortmund was clear when I left that I said something has to change here. It's a different situation, but in that we want it's similar. Either I go or either I the manager position change or a lot of other things change. So as far as I'm concerned, that's what I hear. If nobody tells me, I will not go. So that means maybe there's a point where we have to change other stuff, and we will see that. But that's again something for the future, like future summer, whatever, and not now. So and now we cannot even think about it properly. I have space and time and whatever to think about it, but we have to play now better football.
We mentioned Manchester City. Manchester City and Manchester United now only separated by 1 point. Both have played 18 matches. One is in second, one is in fourth. Stephen Warnock, after the incident that happened in the Manchester Derby, he'd like to know what the offside rule is. Thanks for asking him, and thanks for letting him know, courtesy of Sky Sports News once again.
Decisions like this have to be made public. They have to come out and tell us why, what the discussion was, why they came to that decision. Me and Sue don't only do like this show, we do co-commentaries. Whenever you do a co-commentary now, I haven't got a clue what the offside rule is. Haven't got a clue. I don't know the offside rule because it's changed that many times lately. It's so complicated. That wasn't complicated though. That was just so clear and obvious. He's interfered with play. He's taken three people's attention, Akanji, Ederson and Kyle Walker's attention. So straight away, he's interfered with play. And I was speaking to my brother yesterday, and my brother just turned around. He's on the pitch. Of course, he's interfering with play, and it's true though. It's so obvious that he's took the attention of three players. So by doing that, he's interfering with play and he's offside. But again, come out and speak about it. Come out and be clear. Let us know why. But we don't hear, and that's the frustration part of it. Because if it gets cleared up and we go, OK, we understand them reasons, whether we agree with it or not, but we'll never know.
Chelsea winning the Mykhailo Mudryk sweepstakes. They're in 10th. They had a two-match losing streak snapped last time out with the victory that got them to 28 points in 10th place. Very, very cool thing that the large transfer fee going from Chelsea to Shakhtar Donetsk, the way it's going to go. Rinat Akhmatov has pledged as president of Shakhtar Donetsk to donate money to help the war effort. Here's our friends at Good Morning Transfers and what they thought about that particular very, very classy move.
£20 million of that Mudryk deal will be going to help Ukrainian soldiers and their families. I mean, that is just a beautiful gesture.
Absolutely, and Rinat Akhmatov, who has run Shakhtar for a long time now, has been active in helping that effort for a long time. And I think what they will do is they will look to bring in young talent. It's obviously very difficult because of the situation they're in at the moment, because what they would have done before is bring in promising young Brazilian talent. We've seen that for many, many years. It's obviously very hard to get some of these young players to effectively go into a war zone to all intents and purposes. So that presents a lot of challenges. But they're a hardy bunch at Shakhtar. They've done this for years. I mean, the Donbass Arena, which they redeveloped, they haven't been able to use for years. They've been effectively homeless since the invasion of Crimea. So, you know, that has been a situation they've had to deal with. They've had to play European games here, there and everywhere. So they are used to this kind of thing. And I'm sure that money will be very, very useful because they lost so much talent when FIFA, to some extent, understandably said these players can leave what is quite a dangerous situation.
Spurs, right now, 5th. They are in the final European competition place at 33 points. They kind of start group number 2. They've lost 2 of 3, but the question was asked on the football show with, once again, Stephen Warnock and Sue Smith about the Spurs and leadership and maybe a lack thereof.
It's so hard to put your finger on, because how many times this season have we said Tottenham haven't turned up in the first half, but then in the second half they do, and they were much better. But At first, I was sort of saying glass half full. I was sort of saying, well, they're going down in games, but the character and the fight and the fitness levels to be able to fight back and win games in the second half. But sometimes, as it's been shown, you can't always do that. And that's been the case in terms of you're 2-0 down against Arsenal. Arsenal defended really well. And yes, Tottenham was so much better in that second half, but they couldn't get themselves back into the game. And I think when you look at Spurs, and when Spurs were playing well and doing well, you think of them being defensively really solid, don't you? Then they were brilliant on the counter with Son, with Kane, Kulusevski playing those balls through. And you just think by Tottenham going a goal down, it doesn't help their style of play because straight away the teams sit back. So they go a goal up, the teams sit back. There's no space then for Tottenham to be able to do that. So it doesn't work in their favour that they're going a goal down in the first half.
I think the other thing, the way I look at it as well is, I think of like Conte when he was at Chelsea and you go, he played the same system, which is absolutely fine. But you had leaders on the pitch, you had players who knew how to grind results out. So if they weren't playing well in the first half, they knew how to stay solid, they knew how to go in at 0-0 and then sort out the problems and fix them. One thing when you play against Arsenal and you play against Manchester City, because they both play similar style, he still played with 2 in midfield. Didn't adapt it and say drop 1 in and maybe go 2 up top, or it's always the same. Now if you look at, I know we're going to talk about it a little bit.
Brighton right now is in 7th. They've played 18 matches. They're at 30 points. They've won 3 of their last 4, but it looks like it's the end of time for Leandro Trossard and his time with Brighton and Hove Albion. So what are Trossard's options? Where could he be going? What is next for someone who has taken Brighton and been a part of their move into the top third of the table? Here's the questions answered, at least in some degree, by our friends at Sky Sports News.
Leandro Trossard's agent says the Belgian forward wants to leave Brighton and will not sign a new contract after falling out with boss Roberto De Zerbi. An unnamed European club have had a bid rejected because it didn't meet the club's valuation of the player. So, Anton, we mentioned the agent there. What exactly has he said?
Right, let's have a bit of he said, shall we? So let's start with the agent. Jersey Comhair released a statement on Friday. Basically, I'll paraphrase what he said. I'll give you the bullet points. He said that Brighton wanted to extend the player's contract before the World Cup, but terms couldn't be agreed. Then after Qatar, Trossard came back, had an altercation with the player at the training ground. Roberto De Zerbi then went 4 weeks without speaking to Trossard. Trossard then picked up a calf problem, and then we found out when he came back he had to train away from the first team. And the agent insists that De Zerbi has acknowledged that the best resolution is to move on without Leandro Trossard. Now that's the agent. De Zerbi came out after the game against Liverpool. Again, they did very well without Leandro Trossard, and said, look, he's a very good player. I'm open to speak to him and try to find a solution. And, let's see what happens next. So he's leaving the door open. In terms of the contracts, you're right, Trossard only has 6 months left on his deal, but there is a club option to extend his deal. That needs to be done by the end of March. So it's interesting to see what Brighton and the club do next. But like we said, without Trossard, Brighton were excellent over the weekend, 60+% of the ball and 4 times as many shots on target as Liverpool. So, they clearly have a model without Leandro Trossard. So it's whether they decide to cash in now or whether they try to seek a resolution.
Sam, Brighton are well known and praised a lot for their transfer business. How do you think they'll handle this situation?
I'm actually not sure, because when you look at the Brighton squad and the way they've handled their transfers, I don't think I've seen a situation like this when a player's come out and openly said that, their agents come out and said that they want to move elsewhere, and they've having disagreements with the management and the manager's saying things. But with Trossard, I think he's obviously been a great player for Brighton in the Premier League. I think he's scored their second most goals in the Premier League as well. He's scored 7 goals this season. He probably didn't expect this to happen during his time at Brighton, but I think, like Anton said, they've been great without him. Matoma scored 2 goals in 3 games. He looks really exciting. Lallana, when he can stay fit, he's a great player. Their forwards, McAllister's come back from the Argentinian squad. There was a few noises and things around whether he's going to push for a move. He hasn't done that. He's come back in. He's even scored a few goals as well. So I think the system at Brighton makes sense if the manager thinks that the player can play there. And I think with Trossard, they don't necessarily need to have that drama around them, but they're in 7th place. If they want to stay in that position, they need to keep their best players, and he's one of their best players.
Not to be outdone, West Ham down at the bottom of the table. Once again, we'll get into the standings coming up in just a little bit. West Ham Looks like they're bringing in Prem. They've only gotten 1 point in their last 5 matches. Right now they are in the relegation zone. Here's what the panel at Sky Sports News thought about that particular move.
Welcome back. It's time for State of Play. West Ham are stepping up their attempts to bring in a striker. Yesterday, they made a £20 million offer for the Lorient striker Prem. The bid is £20 million, but £5 million in add-ons. He's 23 years old, and he actually scored for Lorient at the weekend. It appears that he's having quite a good season out in France. Tell us more about him, Anton.
Yeah, West Ham are going to West Ham, no matter what, aren't they? Every window they're linked with a striker, despite the fact they spent big on Gianluca Scamacca in the summer, and they've also got Michael Antonio on the books, but Prem is the player they're looking at now, and to be brutally honest, I can see why he's a player it's really easy to fall in love with. 12 goals in Ligue 1 this season, which, if you compare it to the other strikers in the division, is well up there. And you watch the game tape on him, and he's just really, really exciting. He's quick, he's intuitive, he plays on the shoulder of defenders. So when West Ham play on the break when they're at their best, he's going to be at his best potentially. If defenders switch off, he's like
Then wrapping up and going back to our friends at Chelsea, the panel once again at the football show and Good Morning Transfers was asked whether or not Chelsea has overpaid for Mykhailo Mudryk. Yes, it is top 5 in all-time transfer fees, but did they overpay? Here's their thoughts and their answer.
2 windows and is intense. I mean, businesses don't act like that. Football clubs do, and that's the difference, isn't it? You can look at it one side. Chelsea have been aggressive. Not just with Mudryk, but they've gone out, like you said, identified a target, went out to Turkey and made sure he was getting on the plane with them when they came back. That is aggressive. That is making sure they get their player. But going into this window, was he their top target? I don't know, because you look at this, look how much they've spent compared to the other Premier League signings in history. What's that? Top 5 on a player that's got fewer than 50 league games under his belt and one Champions League campaign. It's a massive outlay. To be put up there with the likes of Grealish, Romelu Lukaku and that kind of thing who've, got Premier League experience, big experience. It's a risk from Chelsea. I admire the tenacity, the aggressiveness, the way they've gone out there and gone, do you know what? Right, someone at this club has identified him as a target. We are making sure he becomes a Chelsea player. But there is a risk. And I know it's a spread over 8.5 years. And I know it's going to, but Chelsea could be paying this off for a long, long time. If it doesn't work, he ends up going, another club and they try and sell him on. They're still going to be paying him off. We used to joke, didn't we, that Chelsea would always be paying off managers for years. But now you look at their transfer strategy. If these moves don't pay off in the next couple of years, they're going to be paying off players' transfer fees for years to come. So it's an interesting tactic to see what they're doing.
I would say, obviously, it said £88.5 million. I think initially it is something around £60 million. And then the extra is add-ons if Chelsea win the Champions League and the Premier League. So I'm sure Chelsea will be happy enough to pay those add-ons and get it up to that fee if they were to win one of the big trophies, whether Mudryk contributes or not.
Yeah, it's the what is market value. Yeah. And you can look at every single deal that Chelsea's done over the last 6, 7, 8 months, and you go, right, well, what was the market value? Have Chelsea overpaid in the short term for all these players? For Mudryk, for Cucurella, they're going to overpay, for example, for Nkunku more than his release fee, so they can get him into the building as well. These are the signings that they've made so far this month, and you go, actually, how many of those? And the thing is, yes, I get it. Like, they're looking years in advance, but they still have short-term targets, and there would have been targets available for less that could have had more of an impact potentially right now. So it's interesting to see what Chelsea do.
Once again, thanks to all of our friends at Sky Sports News, whether it's Good Morning Transfers, the football show, and the teams in the Premier League themselves, for all of the sound for this week. So let's run through the standings. Mentioned Arsenal's 1-4 of 5. They are almost perfect in their last 5 matches, 13 points out of a possible 15, 8 points clear of Manchester City, who had a 3-match unbeaten string snapped with the loss in the derby. They're at 39 points. Newcastle, unbeaten in their last 5, 19 matches played. They're in third at 38. Manchester United, they've run the table. They've won 5 on the spin, and they're at 12-2-4 and 38 points. We mentioned Spurs right now. They're in 5th, starting group number 2 at 33 points. Fulham, the 4-match win streak snapped. They're at 31. Brighton's at 30. Brentford hanging around in 8th place at 29 points, unbeaten in their last 5, and they have matched Arsenal's output, 13 points in their last 5 matches. Liverpool, 2-match losing streak. They are in 9th at 28, ahead of Chelsea on goal difference. And Aston Villa's at 25 points. This technically could start that third group that we're talking about, but we'll keep them in Group 2 for the moment. Villa, they have they're unbeaten in 4 of their last 5. They're at 25 points. Crystal Palace lost 4 of their last 5. They've lost 2 in a row, -9 on goal difference, 18 matches played, 22 points. Now, this is group number 3. Starting off with Nottingham Forest in 13th place. Steve Cooper is, right now, they're unbeaten in their last 3, 7 points in their last 3 matches. They've only lost once in their last 5. They're at 20 points. Leicester is at 17 points, and we've had to go down like 98 tiebreakers to figure out what's going on here. And with Leicester, it is more wins so far. Leicester 5 wins to Leeds 4, even on points, even on goal difference. So that's where you are with Leicester having played 19, Leeds playing 18. Most wins 5-4. Leicester's in 14th place at 17 points. Leeds is in 15th place at 17 points. Leeds only has 2 points in their last 5 matches. Wolves now with the win last time out, win and a draw in their last 2. They've hit each category once in their last 3. They're at 17 points. They've only scored 12 goals in 19 matches this year and a goal difference of -15. Bournemouth right now, they've lost 4 in a row. They're at 4-4-11 at 16 points. Relegation zone right now, West Ham, Everton, Southampton. They're all at 15 points. West Ham has 4 wins in 19. Everton has 3 wins in 19. West Ham actually has one less goal allowed, -10, -11, -17. That's where we are when it comes to goal difference, and what makes the difference right now when it comes to the 3 teams in the relegation zone currently with West Ham, Everton, and Southampton. West Ham and Everton, by the way, they play each other next time out. Southampton gets to play Aston Villa. Speaking of next time out, let's get you into the juice boxes for the next matches coming up for this particular weekend in the Prem as we head toward Matchweek 21. On the midweek, Crystal Palace, Manchester United. Manchester United is a -123. Crystal Palace at home at Selhurst Park is a +361. On the 19th, on your Thursday, Manchester City hosting Spurs. Manchester City at home is a -263. Spurs are north of +700. Skip to Saturday. A lot of matches on your Saturday. There are 6, as a matter of fact, and there are 3 on Sunday, 1 on Monday Night Football. Then you have another FA Cup break, and the league doesn't kick back in until February 3rd. So on Saturday, early kick, Liverpool hosting Chelsea. Liverpool's a -115. Chelsea is north of +300. Bournemouth hosting Nottingham Forest. Juice Boxers have thrown a blanket over both Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest, both within range of +175, and your draw's a +225. Also at 10 o'clock, Leicester hosting Brighton. Brighton's a +108 at the King Power. Leicester's a +254. Southampton hosting Villa, as we said, at St. Mary's. It is at Southampton. It is +190 for Southampton, +150 for Villa on the road, and +241 for your 90-minute draw. West Ham, Everton. West Ham prohibitive favorite at a -127 at their home ground, +271 on the draw. Everton's a +383. 12:30 match on Saturday, Crystal Palace and Newcastle. Newcastle's a -111. Your draw's a +254. Crystal Palace is a +338. Your 3 matches on your Sunday, Leeds hosting Brentford. Leeds is favored at a +140. Brentford's a +190. Your draw's a +266. Manchester City hosting Wolves. Prohibitive favorite, no surprise. Manchester City a -525. Wolves are north of +1400. Arsenal hosting Manchester United. This is another test for both of those two sides. Arsenal 8 points clear. Can Manchester United keep them from really distancing themselves? Manchester United, though, big underdog at a +283, and your draw's a +274. Arsenal a -103 at the Emirates. Monday Night Football, Fulham hosting Spurs. So Spurs have a match on Thursday, then they have a match on Monday night with Fulham, and Fulham is a +2.25 at home at Craven Cottage. Spurs coming on a couple days rest, +116, and your draw is a +274. All of those numbers courtesy of our friends in the composite at Odds Portal. We'll continue to roll through what is going on in the Premier League all season long. But that is another go-round of Prem and Proper, the sights and sounds as we head out of Match Week 20 and into Match Week 21. Very, very busy week that starts on your Wednesday, ends on your Monday, to get you into another FA Cup window on next weekend. For everybody here, thanks for listening to contributor Niall's thoughts on the review preview side. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the network as much as you do. I am just John for everybody here at SDH. For Jason, for Jarrett, for Nick, play it safe, everybody. Enjoy the games in the Premier League. That's another round of Prem and Proper.